Maria looked out the window with a heavy sigh and an irritated shrug of her shoulders. It was true that the view outside the carriage glass was also unappealing. The typical train station commotion that usually predominates prior to the departure of a long-distance train was taking place in front of her on the filthy platform, which was glistening with raindrops. At these times, everything seemed to move more quickly. People were picky, faces were scared with delight, and the conductors were particularly anxious and not happy. They may be comprehended in theory. Is it really so hard for well-respected individuals who are passengers to get to the station on time, go to the carriage beforehand, and take their designated seat? No, you must undoubtedly dash to the boarding gate at the last minute so that 10 people may swarm together, yell, and wave tickets while simultaneously climbing through a tight channel that is not instantly accessible by everyone, even in terms of height. A woman in an obviously tight skirt is considering how to get her leg on the stair without jeopardizing her appearance or reputation. It's simply amusing. She discovered how to. Who's going to storm it and get dressed for the road? It's unbelievable how some people manage to take so many things with them, like pure dung beetles or ants that can drag more than their own weight. If it were things, it would be okay, but some people stock up on food for the train. The carriage is only supposed to arrive in the last minutes, and they are running extremely fast, hurrying along the platform, losing bags, children's string bags, and using all of their remaining strength while moving. She appears to be afraid of not getting to her destination and simply dying of starvation on the way, but she also appears to be able to go for at least a year without eating anything, especially bread, which, incidentally, wouldn't hurt her at all. Oh, and who is this among us, walking with such unusual calm? Look at that guy with glasses on his nose and such a large collection of crossword puzzles in his hands. Like that little fat woman changing her legs, with her arms spread out to the side, clamping a dozen bread baguettes. Wow, the intelligentsia will always act as though they know everything there is to know about everything, but they will also glance at the magazines and every other word to find the correct answer. If you're such a smart citizen, why do you check your ticket every 5 steps and then look up at the sign with the carriage number? When you glance at your watch and see that you are running late, all the serenity will go. Don't your 2 or even 3 diplomas help you just recall the correct number and calmly search for it? Also ran along the platform like a goose, and someone else stands there, resisting the urge to leave without waiting for the train to finally move. These are obviously people saying goodbye. For instance, a fussy, thin man is standing there, straining to help a very ugly woman with a complex 3 times larger than himself get into the carriage. The woman finally gave him a menacing look and even put her fist under his nose for persuasiveness. The man's face shows relief and joy, which he has been trying very unsuccessfully. Hides under chagrin, probably got rid of his beloved wife for a while, but here he is trying not to jump up and down right here on the platform from happiness. But here is another kind of person seeing off, a romantic, so to speak, a thin, pale girl with lipstick on her lips and obvious mascara dripping down her cheeks. What do we have here? A real drama, and I wonder who she is seeing off. And that guy over there, he is sticking out of the train door, and the conductor, who is far from romantic, is apparently attempting to push him back well, and it appears that they are in love. How wonderful if you don't pay. The guy is obviously happy, as evidenced by the way he waves his hands joyfully and nearly falls off the step. In contrast, the girl is very depressed and clearly feels that nothing positive will come of their separation. Yes, girl, your boy is leaving for the capital now, and only you saw him. Masha suddenly woke up and listened in awe to her own thoughts. What is wrong with her? Where is all this vile and evil irony towards complete strangers and innocent people? Why is she standing by the train window and nearly sparks of annoyance? She's never been this way, and what kind of foolish and, most importantly, evil thoughts are populating her mind? After all, things might not be as they seem. It's likely that a man with a lot of luggage, the father of a large family, has only 1 bag or 1 suitcase per person, which is perfectly normal, and now, instead of a man who bravely drags on himself the belongings of everyone he has there, his 5 children are waiting on the benches, or rather, the shelves in the compartment, and the aunt holding the loaves of bread is the family's mother. The buns in her hands are just a couple of snacks, and the smart guy with the collection of scan words is actually the smartest person, erudite, and he not only doesn't look at the answers, but he also makes them up. With those who see them off, everything can be completely different. The guy and the girl truly love each other, and she cries, not out of suspicion or animosity, but rather from separation, and he is just a happy person who smiles to convey his sorrow. He left on business, and upon his return, they will have a wedding. A train ride is not an excuse to dress in shapeless, ugly things. A woman should always remain a woman if her soul requires makeup, skirts, and stilettos. A long-distance carriage is not an obstacle for this at all. They will be very good, and the woman in the tight skirt, well done, waved her hand, smiled shyly, and, pulling the fabric higher, climbed into the carriage, causing a wave of joyful approval along the way from both those seeing her off and the men waiting to board. Even the skinny guy may be happy simply because I have to fly out the day after tomorrow at the very least in 2 days, and I need to be there on Wednesday, so that's good. I've fulfilled my duties, and I've given you a ticket tomorrow, so you'll leave on the train, and you'll be there on Wednesday. They are bought out a month or even 2 in advance, especially now that I'm in the middle of vacations. So why should I care? The girl, judging by everything, was very confident in herself and looked at Masha quite. He was able to push his huge wife into the wagon because she could not fit through the doors, but no, her first suspicions are probably right. He is impatiently marking time because he obviously has more exciting plans and does not want to waste any more of his free time feeling like she is being led somewhere incorrectly again, and the smile that came back onto her face turns into a sarcastic grin. Maria moved away from the window, but it is still abnormal that she is so agitated. We must find a way to. The reason for this bilious outburst was essentially understandable. Maria couldn't stand trains and everything related to them. The idea that she would have to spend 3 nights and 2 days in a train carriage instead of 4 hours of sleep in an airplane seat, constantly getting up, sitting, and even lying down if she were willing to risk it, was simply tormenting her. She had never spent so much time on a train in her life. Such a long trip honestly scared her, and she couldn't get rid of it. A long train trip was a forced opportunity to return home in the near future. Maria Sergeyevna Ostakova, the financial auditor of a large company, was on a business trip to one of the most remote enterprises of the holding. The timing of the audit that the company's management had started was uncertain, and a return ticket was not something that Maria did not order because she believed that after sitting down in the carriage as a relatively young woman, she would get out of it as a gray and shaking old woman. Imagine her astonishment when, rather than, they gave her a voucher of some sort instead of the standard ticket form. What is this? She was taken aback. The factory's secretarial girl cheerfully told her, "It's a train ticket." "You know what? Well, that's fine," nodded the impudent girl. "In this case, Maria Sergeyevna, you're staying with us for a long time. Well, at least for another month, you understand." Masha became enraged and said, "You must be kidding me. Give this nonsense back. I'm not going on the train." The girl saw that Masha was growing irate and decided to clarify that we're not the capital. There are only 2 flights per week and tickets for. Maria grabbed her ticket from the girl's fingers and picked up the phone, saying, "Hello, this is the ticket office." She said into the receiver, "I need a ticket for tomorrow's flight," and the receiver responded, "You know me too." Outrageous, Maria said clearly to her laughing interlocutor, and she hung up. She couldn't stand all this road romance, with the fields and groves flashing outside the window, the wires and poles racing with the train without any joy. The food, which again many passengers actively brightened the long trip, did not go down her throat, causing sensations similar to those that arose from the flickering outside the window, and she did not cry out of emotion from the beauty and vastness of the Russian expanses and the elements of Senin. Instead, she felt a slight nausea from the flickering of the guns, and the train's sweet clatter did not calm many but rather irritated them. Maria could always sleep normally only if 3 conditions were met: complete darkness, complete silence, and total immobility. It is easy to assume that with such meticulousness, there was no discussion of Masha's sleep on the train. How can you sleep when everything around you is trembling, creaking, knocking, blinking, and speaking in different voices. Oh, and this is the most crucial thing. The infamous carriage communication, which is somehow required as if the fact that people suddenly find themselves in a small space makes them almost like relatives and like-minded people in matters of raising children, growing flowers, and disgusting. In general, the whole carriage environment was extremely unpleasant for Maria. The quality of the products in stores and the prices of real estate are just ridiculous, and they only pick on people. If someone does not want to participate in these discussions, he instantly becomes unpleasant for everyone and generally a very suspicious person at such outcasts. In the end, a person without interests is forced to shamefully leave the compartment so as not to interfere with normal people discussing important topics. Okay, nothing, I will just sit as long as. The women in the compartment appeared normal, at least for the time being, as they were keeping quiet and not taking the cutlets out of their bags. Then her humility was once again in danger. And what was in danger? Just ruthless destruction. Oh my dear, I see you have a magazine called Gardener Amateur, and you are fond of tomatoes. Yes, that's wonderful. Tell me, dear, have you tried planting the Moscow tomato? The owner of the upper seat skillfully flew down and gazed at the elderly woman with admiration. What did you say? No, I don't even know that one. I always plant the Ural one. It's also early. What are you saying? It's the last century. The native of at least the first half of this very same one declared authoritatively. This was extremely early. The neighbor of the lower compartment was speaking to another passenger. The elderly, lively woman looked with pleasure at the younger, more cheerful lady. At least the place on top did not bother her at all. Then, somewhere nearer the beginning of the century, there is a wonderful early ripening Moscow variety. I planted in May straight in the open ground, and it's absolutely amazing. The interlocutor was amazed and even pressed her hands in silent delight. Yes, and its tops are so wonderful, fragrant, and so bright. It's a pity that piglets can't be given them, but mine eat carrots with pleasure, although some smart guys also say, "You can't," the elderly woman went on. The person who specializes in growing unpickled tomatoes became interested, so you took a couple of carrot tails, chopped them up, and brewed them with boiling water. When the delighted interlocutor saw a picture of her hobbies, she enthusiastically agreed, saying, "Oh yes, you need to listen to less of all sorts. They understand a lot." Nothing will happen. By the way, I myself love fresh tops both in salads and in soups, and you can chew them like that. And do you know how they help with joints? Yes. Her back, looking pitying, exited the compartment. The day was coming to an end, and the sun was just hanging on the side she was looking at from the carriage window. Masha leaned toward the horizon and filled the room with a pinkish golden light, which caused reflections on the glass. It was incredibly beautiful, and even Maria Ostakova, who has thick skin, felt this beauty. Her mother used to make fun of her, saying, when they were giving out romanticism and enthusiasm, our Masha made the front of the line for her intelligence and tenacity. At her daughter's not at all girlish character Masha, who actually hardly ever appreciated landscapes, still lives, and other picturesque combinations, Maria exhaled admiringly, and it turns out that she did so aloud because the same sigh was heard nearby. Perhaps because she had nothing better to do, she stood idle for the first time in many days, if not years, and without any particular thoughts, sincerely admiring the summer sunset piercing with scarlet golden rays, describing the entire space between the horizon and the running carriage as beautiful. Masha shivered in surprise when she heard a male voice respond, as if to say, "Don't say Maria Sergeyevna, it's very beautiful only." She didn't even realize at first that she was being addressed by her first name and patronymic, and when she realized that she knew this voice well, she simply shook her head if she was lacking something in order to finally and irrevocably despise the carriage life. To be honest, it would have been better if she had remained in her compartment and listened to the rumors of. Her neighbors would have instilled in her the values of gardening and traditional medicine. In any event, she had more opportunities for this than for regular conversation with a man who abruptly interrupted her appreciation of the sunset. She squinted and raised her head, saying, "Well, I must say, Kirill Stepanovich," she said, rather incompetently pretending to be happy. "What a pleasant surprise you are." "Yeah, I am," he said with excitement as well, but unlike her, he appeared serious. Can you envision an unexpected encounter, and I stand there looking, but my eyes miss it? I swear, I even rub my eyes, and I think it's Maria Sergeyevna herself. She hissed through her teeth, saying, "I've told you 1,000 times, so don't mutilate my name with some stupid country accent. Save your dashing simplicity for gullible girls." Oh, come on, don't be offended. It wasn't me who came up with it. That's what they called you at our factory, which means our Maria is a true craftswoman. You've woven such intricate lace there in just 2 weeks, and now the entire management is sitting there wondering how we're going to get out of this. Masha abruptly said, "You're all lying," with his eyes openly laughing. "I don't know that all the dumb and, by the way, not funny jokes going around the plant or you're doing in general, all this nastiness is from you. As for business, there was no need to confuse, that is, to let things go like that, and the whole management wouldn't have to sit now. By the way, maybe someone else will go to jail for you. Well, literally for your negligence in reporting." Maria became ecstatic. "In your place, dear Kirill Stepanovich, I wouldn't be so calm and self-assured. After all, the chief engineer is not the last person at the factory, so generally speaking, I don't want to talk to you, especially about such things, and I don't like seeing you. On the contrary, it's a damn unpleasant nuisance, and I wish you the best." She turned away from the man and hurried to her compartment, but she stopped abruptly as if she had encountered an invisible wall, and she turned around in shock when she heard a quiet laugh coming from behind her. With his disgusting manner of holding himself, strange sense of humor, and monstrous self-confidence, of which it was unclear what, Maria suddenly realized that she hadn't seen anything more attractive in a long time, unless, of course, you counted today's sunset. Kirill Stepanovich Yudin was good, so that's all right, and to deny it would be as foolish as saying that the sun wasn't setting over the horizon right now but was rising right now. His clean-shaven cheeks were shining, and there was no obligatory smear of machine oil on his nose or forehead, which was particularly noticeable. His thin, normal facial features did not make his face effeminate. Rather, it was entirely masculine and beautiful. However, the focal point of his face was his light gray, transparent eyes, which were surrounded by dark eyelashes. He also had dark hair, a high forehead, white teeth, and an excellent build. All of this made his face an impressive sight, but what was most striking was that the owner of all this external wealth appeared to say. To everyone around him, he said, "Well, yes, I know, but it's not my fault that I was born like this. Although, to be honest, I'm not complaining. If I offended anyone, I apologize, but this is nonsense in general, so what were we going to talk about?" But, despite Yudin's attractiveness, Maria couldn't stand him. She got to know him very well during her time at the plant, and she recognized his merits, at least some of them, and what can I say? She even owed him her salvation in the strictest sense of the word, and she couldn't do anything about it because she loved him so much. In general, the relationship with Yudin was difficult and not particularly pleasant, which was made worse by the fact that he was interesting, handsome, decisive, smart, and something else of that kind. However, it does happen that people are just unpleasant to each other without objective reasons or explanations at the level of feelings and emotions. This is exactly what happened with her and Maria in relation to Yudin, the chief engineer of the plant, and it appears that the antipathy was reciprocal. In any case, he did not miss a single opportunity to tease her frequently and quite sensitively. "Really need time for this. You can tell such people right away that he is a wonderful person with your heart." Anna said, "Oh, okay, Anna Ivanovna, I won't argue with you." Maria waved her hand and placed it on her shelf. What a cherub, what a savior of old women. He is a Siberian fan, but he is not a fan, he is a braggart. Yes, you can think of him at all. She has nothing else to worry about. By the way, the devil is aware of her life, but choosing not to think about Yudin was much easier than not thinking about it. Couldn't articulate, but only vaguely sensed, and this something was embarrassing, keeping her from living, and because of all this, she was even more angry with Yudin. He was even more repulsive, she thought angrily, settling down on her seat and frightening the neighbors, who even interrupted the conversation about the mulching or composting method. Instead, Masha thought the same thing. "What's wrong with you, baby? You have spots all over your face, so wait, I'll pour you some tea now, the elder woman said, gazing eagerly at Maria. The old woman's reaction was completely unexpected, but it's true that he looks like Fan Tulip, only older, plumper, and more solid. How did I not guess about Kiryashenka? She asked as she smiled. A thermos with chamomile and honey is very soothing. Maybe you need something else? Do you need something else? Maria nodded. Throw one out of the carriage will help drag around. You know there is one unfinished Helen Delon here, or are you talking about Kiryashenka or something? Was assisting me, and I noticed that, yes, we haven't met yet, but we'll be traveling together for 2 days. What's your name, Maria? She muttered, attempting to make her face look polite. When you don't know anyone, it's easy to remain silent, and now that we've introduced ourselves, a compartment acquaintance is practically family, at least for the duration of the trip. Mashenka is amazing, and this is Zoya. The elderly woman nodded at her tomato-like-minded woman, so that's who we were discussing, and Kirill's face broke into a smile and said, he helped me so much with my suitcase, damn it, he dragged it, and at the same time, he pushed me into the carriage. So thanks to him, I'm on my way, otherwise I would still be sitting on my bag in the station square. Big deal as savior, just a normal man's act. Anyway, he's a bore, Kiryashenka a bore, Maria muttered. What are you saying, Mashenka? He's a wonderful person, Anna Ivanovna was astounded. Yes, you've only known him for a couple of hours, but I've had this happiness for 2 weeks, so I know better. German Alexievich was Masha's patron in the literal and figurative sense of the word. He was an old friend of the Ostakov family, and Maria found herself at the request of the head of their enormous holding company, which brought together multiple such enterprises under its management, right next door, literally behind a thin partition of a compartment at a factory located in a small Siberian town 3,000 kilometers from the capital. He was completely different from anyone else she had ever been brought together with in her 35 years of life. German, according to his own words, remained an inconsolable lover, sticking out in front of the newlyweds as an eternal reproach. However, Irina always laughed cheerfully when she recalled the story. Well, Gurka, I remember how you grieved long and violently for 2 days. She nodded and then went to the movies with your Zanolia. According to family legends, German even tried to steal a girl from a friend in an honest and open manner. However, the girl preferred Sergei Ostakov, got married, and gave birth to his daughter Maria. Irina and 10-year-old Masha were very happy when Maria, who was finishing school and had moved past her girlish dreams of a film career, modeling, or sports glory, seriously considered finances as a future profession. Trinity and Masha had been friends all their lives, and despite these details, Herman seemed to have taken responsibility for them after burying his friend who had passed away so meticulously. By that time, he was already a respectable, authoritative, and extremely wealthy businessman, so you go study and then work for me, etc. are happening with us now, and I understand how important our own people are, especially in these financial matters where the devil himself will break his leg. Masha graduated from college and naturally came to work in the very holding where Herman Alexievich was one of the founders of the directors of the shareholders in general. The most important thing is that everyone will say, you hired me only because I am Ostakova, the daughter of your friends. She questioned, why can't I hire you because of this? Herman was surprised, especially since you are like a daughter to me. Well, Masha, you are your head, remember. Start working, and if it turns out that I was wrong about you, well, I'll fire you from your job regardless of your last name here, and we'll fix your reputation. However, the old businessman was right. Maria proved to be a great financier, and every year of work only strengthened her experience, insight, and intuition. After a few years, she was promoted to chief economist auditor of the company, spending a significant portion of her time visiting various businesses, firms, factories, plants, and factories to evaluate the accuracy of reporting and production efficiency. When a difficult conversation came up, Maria Sergeyevna, dear German, would always use this odd phrase. Or rather you have a little trip planned here. You know, do we need to comb through our little factory in Vienna? Things are really going badly in NSK. Maria was surprised that they hadn't closed it down yet because they were planning to do it there, but the profits are pitiful and the costs are huge. Before making such a final decision, we need to go and thoroughly study the situation, figure out how much we need to invest there, and whether it's worth it. You and Herman perked up all of a sudden. You know that a guy like that has been the chief engineer there for about 10 years, and you look at him more closely. What made this fly up Masha in that very moment? Herman Alexievich nodded and smiled. I dare to remind you that you are already married, so you forgive me for being an old fool for me interfering in your affairs. I just can't stand to see you suffer and waste your life on someone who didn't deserve you. All right, that's all. I'm sorry, girl. You'll figure it out on your own, Big. As for the plant, I'll tell you again, liquidate it. I'll agree only if everything there is completely hopeless. Well, Mash, you know this is my hometown, and there are people there and nowhere else to work, so I wouldn't want to deprive them of their last chance. The people there are wonderful, so she reprimanded the boss in her soul for his unexpected sentimentality. On the first day of her business trip, she found herself in a far-off lot at an old plant that was dying. We're certain that all of her guesses were accurate. Everything was terrible here. Even worse, the machinery was outdated, rattling like a heap of scrap metal, and the financial statements were just awful, full of mistakes, miscalculations, and outright blunders. Herman admired these wonderful people, but she honestly did not understand the chief engineer, whom she met in a scandalous situation that she herself cannot recall, and she sat in the accounting department for a few days feeling a little embarrassed. So, well, everything is clear to me here. I need to talk to the management of all this, she said, rummaging through the reports with an angry frown and tragically remaining silent. The cat's appearance scared the poor chief accountant, so she waved her hand at an imaginary figure that represented the plant. It's a terrible thing, but Maria Sergeevna, you know, the director and his deputy will be at work tomorrow from the management. Now that only Yudin is at work, this is our chief engineer. Suddenly, the woman brightened as if she felt a surge of strength, so it would be even better for you to speak to Kirill. Stepanovich, you have a lot of questions about the equipment, yes? Maria smiled and asked, where is your chief engineer's office? His office is close to the next one down the corridor, but he is not there. He is almost never at his place. The chief accountant replied, and in general, does anyone from your management go to work? Well, just for a change. Masha became irate and said, oh, what did you misunderstand? He is at work. The woman chattered. He is in the office, but he doesn't sit. He is more and more in the workshops. You go straight there, and only Maria Sergeevna will take you. You know you should. Masha stood up resolutely and imitated the chief accountant, saying, change your shoes. Our production there is not particularly clean after all, and it's not just not particularly clean here. Well, where is your unfortunate chief engineer? Masha yelled angrily, trying to cut through the din of the machinery without letting her protective helmet slide down her nose. You have outright dirt everywhere here, literally and figuratively. She ought to have changed her shoes after listening to this amusing, unsophisticated woman from the accounting department, but it's too late, and her lovely suede shoe has a greasy mark of some sort. She was so furious that she was prepared to snatch the chief engineer's throat right away because he was causing her to drag herself around the filthy workshop. Why are you unhappy? She asked. Then, somewhere near her knees, she heard a man in overalls crawl out, his hands so filthy that they appeared to be alien and were only attached to the sleeves. Why are you unhappy? He asked in a slightly raspy voice. Very happy with life, and if I manage to make it to the broadcast in the evening. A hockey game broadcast in the evening, I'll be very happy. Masha turned to the worker who was talking in awe. No, this is not a factory, but some sort of circus. Listen in a whisper. She scowled. I am amazed at your knowledge of the boss's affairs. But just tell me where he is. Where is this so-called chief engineer of yours again? It's not true. The strange worker muttered, he's not so-called but quite real, and Maria became irate. The filthy man in overalls said, pardon my appearance, but let me introduce myself, Kirill Stepanovich Yudin. She struggled to find the right words, but she soon realized and nearly yelled, why are you here and looking like this? Do you have nothing else to do? What is going on here? Are you the manager or who? How can anyone take you seriously? That's why everything here is in such a state that you, the chief engineer of the plant, are sitting under some piece of iron and tightening. The man replied sadly, "Nuts, you understand, dear woman. If I don't immediately tighten this nut on this piece of iron now, I'm afraid there will be nothing to organize and coordinate, and there will be nothing to manage either. The business process will be covered." The man's eyes, which were large and light gray and glowed on this sturdy face like two precious stones of very pure and high quality, gave her the impression that he was laughing, but she also realized that he wasn't a woman and that he wasn't a sweetheart. Yuden was shocked. "Regarding the first one, we can still agree that it's too early to call you sweetheart, but what about the second one? How about who are you if you're not a woman?" Again, this is blatantly good-natured mockery, and not all of the smiling faces that aren't working are probably those same wonderful people, in Herman's opinion. Maria closed her eyes and tried to recall at least one thing from the many trainings she had completed on how to interact with staff members effectively, but nothing appropriate screamed. Squealing the last words, "Enough is enough. I'm tired. Keep in mind that I'm Maria Sergeyevna, and I've come for a thorough inspection of your business. I have the authority to completely disperse your Shereshkino office in 20 minutes. I'll be waiting for you, Mr. Yuden, in the director's office with all the equipment's documentation and explanations of the reasons why the fixed assets and assets entrusted to you aren't being used effectively." "I can't, so let's do it in 40 minutes. The underhandedness of an already sizable crowd, but I desperately need to launch this main asset that has been trusted to me, and I need to wash my assets." He extended his dirty hands towards her in a manner similar to the dirt that had been reduced in them forever. Maria realized that she would be better off remaining silent if she wanted to save face, or rather its remnants, and snorted, lifted her nose sharply, turned around and nearly stretched out on the floor due to a broken heel. "Oh, well, who?" She heard. A hoarse, quiet voice and finally detested its owner. "The boar. Pentuka, the boar," she muttered, picking at her shoes of various heights. He presumably became the boss in the factory office by accident because no one else was available to fill this position. All he knows is how to tinker with hardware. And there's a wit there. Well, whatever. I'll set up a comedy and satire competition for you. 40 minutes later, a short, broad-shouldered man entered the director's office, nodded solemnly, and sat down at the table. Masha took note of the solid figures with her peripheral vision. He nodded with a sigh, though it rarely works out more, and more you have to run around the shop with a wrench. Masha thought, at least someone sane, at least normally dressed, not grimacing. She finished the sentence quickly, then raised her head and stared in amazement at Yuden himself. "You?" She raised her eyebrows, trying to pretend that she was not struck by his appearance. "Well, that's a completely different matter, and it turns out you can look very decent. I completely agree with you, Maria Sergeyevna, but we have a staffing schedule that is so beautiful that you read it and your soul is just happy, and there are no mechanic repairmen, that's the catch. That's why you run these are the duties of a mechanic repairman adjuster or whatever he is called in your staffing schedule, so he should be engaged in equipment." He nodded seriously, first because I'm not Maria, but Maria Sergeyevna minted, and secondly, why don't you have mechanics? Well, probably for the same reason. "I know, Maria Sergeyevna, and I completely agree with you," Maria said proudly. "I tell my last adjuster Vanya every day early in the morning, you look, wait, and now as soon as the profits start pouring in, you'll immediately get a serious one. That's because you don't have turners, milling machine operators, general workers, and many other things, and we pay little so people don't come to us. Serious salaries are paid at businesses that bring in profit." As the chief engineer, I looked at the reports on the costs of maintaining and operating the equipment, and my hair stood on end. What kind of profit can we discuss when your terrible expenses include a utilization rate of machines and lines below 40%? Yuden looked at her without even the slightest hint of laughter, and she sighed deeply. A terrible person, even though he looks like what is she talking about?